welcome back to my read-along of A Tale of Stars and Shadow. Today we are up to chapter 24. I'm going to jump right in. Talyn took the Shadowhawk's warning to heart, at least in the short term. She was confident she could find him again if needed, but he had leverage on her, and his threat had been clear. Their brief encounter hadn't done much to answer her questions. The surprise in his voice when she'd questioned him about the break-in she'd judged to be genuine, yet he promptly then demonstrated his ability to get in and out of a guest room in the palace without detection. Answers no. A better sense of who the Shadowhawk was? Most definitely. A master at hiding, yet one that had grown complacent, pitting himself against the lazy patrol and incompetent wingguard. And despite that, despite every snippet she'd gathered about him indicating he worked alone, he had a network of good sources. To have deduced what he had about her, he was clever, and much more than what he seemed. No, ultimately there was no value in pushing the issue and going after him again. She'd written to the Callanan and told them what she'd discovered, and until they wrote back with more instructions, it would be wiser to leave it. So she placed her full focus on the wolves and shaping them into a decent protective guard. So far it was working. Inch by grueling inch, they were beginning to meld into a unit. As the weeks passed, 2 months becoming 3 months and then 4 months, their strength and stamina improved, and they began to handle their weapons with a semblance of skill. One particularly hot afternoon, Talyn sparred with Zamril, the wood of their training swords clacking loudly across the yard. Sweat ran down both their faces. Half her attention was focused on inwardly cursing how damn human it was. It was like sparring in soup. Then, with a quick flick of his wrist, Zamril was suddenly inside her guard. He stopped, stunned, and Talyn recovered quickly, smacking him on the shoulder with the flat of her blade. Irritated at her lapse, the hit was harder than she'd intended. "Next time you get through an opponent's guard like that, don't stop and gape like a fish," she said as he scowled and rubbed his shoulder. "You let me beat you," he challenged. "I have too much pride for that. You got through on your own." His return scowl was half-hearted, and she caught the glimmerings of pride in his pale blue eyes. Of them all, Zamril was the hardest to train. He had no confidence in himself aside from his skills as a thief, and refused to let go of the idea that he was useless to them. Talyn made a point of acknowledging his every achievement, doggedly trying to instill some self-esteem into the man. "Good work today. Off you go and do some more practice with Theak." She'd been keeping a close eye on Zamril and Corrin to see whether their suspected Callanan potential would emerge. The thief, because he'd spent years being light on his feet and honing the natural athleticism and agility of his body, had shown particular talent for the dancing movements of swordplay. The fact he'd just gotten through her guard after 2 months' training gave her hope. She might be rusty, but she was still a fully trained and experienced warrior. Halun, brawny hulk that he was, had the physique and strength for the heavy battle axe. Theak had begun lessons with him, and he had shown definite aptitude for the weapon. Talyn's second was delighted, as hard as he tried to hide it. Axemen had been few and far between in the city patrol. Corrin's talent had already been clear, knife work. He was also a quick learner with a sword and was beginning to display the athleticism Zamril already had in spades, something that would likely improve in leaps and bounds once he stopped growing and settled into his gangly frame. Talyn, while not possessing the natural aptitude of Zamril and Corrin or the experience of Theak, nonetheless had the superior vision of the winged folk, so she tested him with a bow. She'd been surprised to learn there weren't any archers in Mithrena. An archer gave their wing a long-distance capability, an advantage given how severely under-resourced they were. Theak had looked askance when Talyn had asked why the falcons didn't carry bows. Why would they need to? It had seemed obvious to her. Their single advantage in battle is their ability to fly. As soon as they're on the ground fighting with the swords they carry, they're no different than any other soldier. A surprised flicker had crossed his face. "That's why you've got Talyn using those wings of his against us in sparring. If he doesn't learn to use them, he'll only find them a hindrance and a vulnerability in a real fight." "You keep saying you made me your second because I'm the only experienced one here," Theak cleared his throat. "But truth is, Captain, I've only ever been in one-on-one fights, the occasional brawl. Nothing like a battle you'd see in war." It meant she was the only one who could teach Talyn. The bow wasn't her favourite weapon, but she'd developed the marksmanship skills that all Aimseer possessed during her youth. The weapon the Aimseer used, however, was a smaller recurve bow, and she hadn't used one in years. Because of Talyn's well-developed upper body musculature necessary to support his wings, he was better suited to the longbow, which had longer range and more power. Zamril now engaged with Theak. She put aside her training sword and wandered over to where Talyn patiently strung his new longbow. "Halun's been helping me out," Talyn looked up at her approach. The arrows we've been using felt a little unbalanced. He carved me these new ones last night. What do you think? Talyn took one and balanced it in her hand. It certainly feels about right. Keep working with Halun. He's very talented. Thanks, Captain. The tone of respect he used warmed her. Captain! The sharp note in Thiak's voice had her turning quickly. Brightly coloured wings fluttered in the sky as a group of winged folk descended into the yard. Talyn gestured sharply, and the wolves stopped what they were doing to come and stand behind her in a straight line. She counted 7 winged men, 5 of whom were falcons. Their teal jerkins had scarlet slashes across their shoulders, which Ravenier's falcons, the Queen's detail, didn't. These were from a different wing. Prince Kuan's brothers, Thiak murmured, his voice pitched so only Talyn could hear it. Her gaze went instantly to the 2 not wearing uniforms, and not just because of Thiak's words. They stood out from the rest in the way Kuan often did. The one on the left was taller than her charge and broader across the shoulders, his musculature evident underneath his fitted jerkin. Dark wings hung from his back, a beautiful ebony shimmer sparkling through where the feathers caught the sunlight. He was the first to step forward, and the coiled strength and power in his movement marked him clearly as the elder brother, Mathanas a Condor. So this was the Prince of Night. You must be the Calumian warrior. A hint of mockery dripped from a voice that was otherwise smooth as silk. Odd that one brother's voice could be so full of laughter and music, while the others held a hint of menace that sent an odd flash of uneasiness through her. Prince Mathanas, she bowed politely. I am Captain Talyn Dynan. The other brother, she struggled a moment to recall his name, Azralan, smiled broadly, putting her in mind of a cat after eating its prey. A little shorter than Mathanas and Lena, he was darkly handsome with his pale skin and charcoal wings and eyes. When he spoke, he didn't exude the same malice as Mathanas, just the edge of unconscious arrogance that she heard every time one of the wing folk spoke to her. This is our dearest brother's new wing? It would seem so. Mathanas ran his gaze over them. Despite the slight smile on his face, there was no warmth in his black eyes. What did they call themselves again? Rabbits? Frogs? Dear me, Mathanas, I think it was wolves. Azralan's voice was light, teasing, as if he genuinely amused rather than intending insult. There were flashes of Kuan in him, and she could see the close relation. Halun growled under his breath behind her, and she shot him a quelling look. Anger wasn't going to serve them here. She kept her tone unchallenging and polite. Was there something you wanted, Your Highness? A little smile curled up Mathanas's mouth, his eyes catching hers in a long look that told her nothing of what he was thinking. There was power there, though, and it made her instinctively wary. We come bearing good news, Captain. Being a foreigner, you may not be aware of our annual monsoon festival. It's a big event in the Citadel, and people come from everywhere to attend. A last hurrah before the rainy season, you might say, Azralan drawled. Rainy season? You're right, she said. I haven't heard of it. This wasn't going anywhere good. She could tell from the shifting feet behind her and the dancing amusement on Azralan's face as he watched their interaction. It sounds like fun. It is, Mathanas assured her. The festival runs for an entire day and contains displays of skill, exhibitions if you like, from different falcon wings. There are also stalls and markets and parties of all types. The main event is an Alea game traditionally played between 2 wings of the Wingguard. This year I have decided to invite your wing to participate. Everything about his tone and appearance suggested she was supposed to take this invite as an honour, even though it most certainly would not be. She summoned a pleased look. Thank you, Prince Mathanas. Who would we be participating against? My wing, Azralan smiled, teeth flashing with merriment. It should be fun, Captain. Your men will put up a good fight, I'm sure. We appreciate the honour of your invitation, and of course we would love to participate, she said evenly. I'm glad to hear it. Mathanas swept a final look over them, and I'll be sure to pass the news on to Kuan. Murmuring with each other, Mathanas and Azralan and their guards leaped back into the air, winging swiftly away. Talyn watched them go, mastering her unease, before turning to look at the wolves. None of them would meet her gaze, not even Thiak. Unease trickled through her. Do any of you know how to play Alea? She asked with a smile, trying to lighten the mood. Of course, Corrin mumbled. For the first time in months, the young man was looking down at his feet. Her unease deepened. All children play it growing up, winged or human. Then why all the glum faces? The prince's attitudes had been far from pleasant, but that wasn't unexpected, nor unusual. There was something she was missing here. The level of dejection and horror in those standing before her spoke of genuine distress. I joined this wing to escape being imprisoned for the rest of my life, Samuel burst out, not to be humiliated by the entire race of winged folk. He turned on his heel and stalked off before Talyn could say a word, muttering curses the whole way. She fixed Theak with a glare. "Tell me what is going on. Now." "Those feathered bastards are doing this to make fun of us," Theak growled, his glare returning. Talyn's mouth fell open as he, too, turned around and walked off in disgust. Halun followed, arms crossed belligerently over his chest. "Will one of you please tell me what's so upsetting about this?" She looked pleadingly at Talyn and Corrin. Corrin was still staring at his boots, hands thrust in his pockets, shoulders hunched. Talyn simply looked miserable. "Humans and winged folk both play a layer, like Corrin said," Talyn said eventually. "But the winged folk are faster, more agile, and more athletic than humans. We're also stronger on account of our wings. Not to mention the falcon's warrior magic. The princes invited us to play against Prince Azralan's wing for a reason. They want to humiliate the human folk and their brother. It's a political game. We'll be routed if we play, and then we, and by extension Prince Kewin, will become the laughingstock of the Citadel." Talyn's inclination to dismiss Talyn's words as exaggeration was swallowed by the depth of her wing's reaction. "I see," she said quietly. "Very well. You're dismissed for the afternoon." He and Corrin walked off in silence. Bit of a downer, that one. That's the end of chapter 24. As always, please jump out here if you'd like to avoid spoilers in my author commentary. And if you are jumping out, I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you in chapter 25, which won't be long. These episodes drop every Wednesday and Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Australian time. Otherwise, if you're sticking around, let's go jump into some author commentary on this chapter. Oh dear, it was all going so well, wasn't it? Talyn was making progress with the wolves. They were starting to get on top of learning their weapons. They were listening to her. They were engaged, if maybe not absolutely loving what they were doing. They were committed to her, and they bought in to some degree, at least, on what she wanted from them and what she was asking from them. And then in this scene, in this chapter, Prince Mathanas, Prince of Night, and Prince Azralan, Prince of Games, show up with their Wingguard wing. Mathanas is inviting the wolves to participate in an exhibition, a layer game against Prince Azralan's Wingguard unit at the Monsoon Festival coming up soon. Now, Talyn, on the surface, understands that this is not like the greatest invitation of all time, and they're not being invited out of friendliness or a desire to have a fun game. She gets that. But what she doesn't understand when she turns around after Mathanas and Azralan have left and face her wing looking absolutely like the entire wind has been knocked out of their sails, the depth of what that invitation actually means. And poor Talyn is kind of left to explain that to her. Mathanas has engineered this entire thing essentially to, one, make a laughing stock of his younger brother, Kewin, which is pretty much his Mathanas' daily job. And two, this is an exhibition game, as we'll see from the later chapter when it actually unfolds, that everyone from the Citadel and from down in Dock City comes up to watch. And this is an attempt or a plan by Mathanas to humiliate the humans once again, to have their human team absolutely routed by a Wingguard unit in a game that everyone is watching. And the humans, the human wolves feel this deeply. They know exactly what Mathanas is doing, and not only personally for themselves don't want to be humiliated, obviously, in front of a bunch of people, but know that they also represent the human folk of Mithraena, and they know that their loss and their routing by a falcon unit is not just representative of themselves, but it's also representative of the human community in Mithraena, and they just don't want a bar of it. And any work, any goodwill that Talyn's engendered with them has essentially flown out the window with that proclamation from Mathanas. Very unlikable man, Prince Mathanas. Very nasty, very focused on the negative in everyone, and very focused on basically punching before anyone punches him. That's Mathanas' modus operandi. We're going to get a little bit more of him in the sequel series to A Tale of Stars and Shadow. As I've announced, Kyrie Vedador is the protagonist, and as we leave at the end of this series, she's married to Mathanas. So Mathanas is going to show up in the new series. We're going to get a little bit more of him. So it's actually, for me as the author, very enjoyable to come back and read these early books when he first appears, and this is his first direct interaction with Talyn. Get to see him as he began. Yeah, that's a little secret fun for me. So yeah, chapter's not ending in a great note. Talyn's work, as we know from those who have read on past here, that all Talyn's good work has just essentially been destroyed, blown up. Thank you very much, Mathanas. Ajlan, thank you. Having a lot of fun just watching these interactions. Prince of Games very much indeed likes watching this manipulation and the impacts that it has on others. He really enjoys watching that. So heading on to chapter 25 soon. If you've got any questions about this chapter or my thinking behind it as I was writing it, as always, drop your questions below. Consider liking and subscribing on your way out. That's a great help for me. Otherwise, I cannot wait to see you for the next chapter, and I hope you have a great day.